Hi. Hello. Hello, hello. Hi, hi, hi. We're back. Yay. Yay. What is up? What is up? Can you guys see me? Can you hear me? Are we good? Are we having good communication here tonight? Because we need it. We need to. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Welcome back to my channel. Can you guys hear me? And do you hear my heater in the background? I might need to get up and turn that off. What's up? Hello. Happy hump day. We're back with Gabby Petito. We're going to talk about Gabby yeah, it's all good. Thank you, 𝐷𝐸ITG, beautiful 𝐷𝐸ITG. Let me see. I'm taking roll. Who is here? Hello. Hi. Welcome, all new viewers, replay viewers. Hello, hello. Thank you for being here and supporting my channel. I am 𝗻𝐿𝑦. We cover all things true crime. All things true crime here. All day, almost every day. I'm obsessed. All right, let me catch up. I'm getting behind now. Hello, 𝗻𝐿𝑦s. I see all my beautiful mods here. Shout out to my mods too. They're always here being there for me and being supportive. They're amazing. I'm the luckiest. I got 𝗻𝐿𝑦, 𝗍𝐶𝐵HI, beautiful 𝐷𝐸ITG, beautiful Debbie. Hello, hello, beautiful mods. I got number 7 in here. Fast Dave, hello. It must be your first time here. Welcome. Welcome, Dave. I'm not sure you're much of a true crime person, but I appreciate the support. Mary, hello, Mary. Hello, hello. I saw Amber Nola in here. What's up, girl? Said hi to 𝐷𝐸ITG. Am I caught up yet? Yashira, hi, love. Hi, love. I've missed you. Good to see you. Good to see you. I saw 𝗏𝗏ero in here. What's up, 𝗏𝗏ero? 𝐂𝐚𝐬𝐡 corner. What's up? What's up? Homie hangout. Okay, okay. Ooh, we have a good crowd in here tonight. And Timo. Okay, so we're covering Gabby Petito. I'm deep diving this case, super deep diving. I have lots of court documents. We're gonna read. I know I did the last live. We went through a lot. It was 4 hours. I read to you, baby, all for 4 hours. Not doing that tonight, but I enjoy it. I love reading the court documents. If you're not familiar with my channel, we cover most true crime cases I cover come with the documents and the body cam footage and not. So if you don't want me to hear me reading to you, you might want to catch the 𝗻𝐿𝑦 After Dark or another live. But we're going to read, we're going to go over through 2 statements that are 1 pages from the Petito family and vice versa. We're going to watch 5 minutes of the body cam footage with Roberta Laundrie. If you're not caught up on the Gabby Petito case, which I think everyone is, I do just want to say before we start, you know, my condolences go out to the Petito family. Still, they're amazing, but can be easy, right? And having to like relive that all the time, even though it's been a couple years. And now the documentary is out. I still haven't watched it yet. I'd rather read all the court documents before I watch it, but and there's a lot. I have over 1,500 pages. So we're breaking it up. But we're going to read the journal entries from Brian, a couple pages of that, and then we'll call it a night. And we're going to do 𝗻𝐿𝑦 After Dark after this. So we'll be getting started. Hey, Beach Bum, good to see you. Hey, ATS. Yeah, I feel like I'd rather hear I'd rather read all the court documents than the documentary, because that's like scripted, right? People are doing that. And so with the court documents and the work that goes into getting all of these, I just feel like you're so much better off just getting the facts. And so we always do that here. I'm going to start. So thank you for being here. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, do all them YouTube things, you know, all YouTube things. I don't feel like I need to give a timeline of the Gabby Petito case, but for those of you who are not familiar, it could be helpful. If you're not familiar with the case, Gabby Petito was unalived by her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie, while they were living the van life. There was domestic violence in the case, in this situation, and her family wasn't aware of it. And his parents played a role into the drama and the disappearance and whatnot, in my opinion. So July 2nd, they set off for a road trip. They end up in Salt Lake City. We saw the body cam footage there. I might hit the timeline after this. We can do a little rerun, but let's get started with the court documents. These are good. These are good documents. For the Brian Laundrie journal entries, I'm going to show you the actual journal, but then I have it like decoded. I did it myself because you can't really read it, but I have it all written down. So we're going to go through it real quick. So let me pull it up. We're going to go through this first document. This is the, it's a warrant for computers. I'm sorry if I missed you. While I'm reading documents, sometimes I have to go back. Hey, Callie. Hey, Beach Bum. Good to see you. Saw Timo in here. Yeah. Good. I saw ATS. Miss you. Okay. Thanks, Yoshira, for being here. Shadow Pit, what's up? Good to see you. Okay. So this is a search warrant for computer and external devices. The last document we read was on the Moab Police Department. I have that lawsuit too. We might get to it tonight. It's pretty long, so I might have to do that one tomorrow night. But I thought this was interesting. Search warrant, computer and external storage devices. So basically, this computer external storage device is a Black Western digital external hand drive with a serial number and product number. The computer is located in the property or evidence vault at the Northport Police Department. This one's hard to read, but the other ones are a little bit better. Any and all storage devices, commercial software, hardware, computer disk, programs, etc. Any digital documents, all data and files associated, files that show emails, text messages, internet browsing history, and any other evidence relating to the subject matter of the warrant that could be used or would be used in a violation of the law. You are further directed to bring the evidence so seized if it be of contraband nature. This law related to missing and endangered persons in Florida. The officer has reason to believe and does believe that evidence connected with the investigation is currently contained within the computer. The description and location of the computer external storage devices is as follows. I already went through that. Your affiant has probable cause to believe that the above named crime has been committed and the evidence may be discovered for the following reasons. Your affiant is a detective with Northport Police Department and is currently assigned to Criminal Investigation Division. Your affiant has been a police officer for approximately 10 years and assigned to the Criminal Investigation Division for 9 months. Your affiant is charged with the responsibility of investigating crimes such as crimes against persons or property and the investigation of missing persons. The subject, 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 Petito, and her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie, left from New York State sometime in mid-June 2021 for a vacation to Utah, traveling a variety of national parks along the way. While they were on the trip, they documented some of the events on YouTube, quoted, van life, beginning our van life journey. During the trip, the subject sent multiple text messages and had many talks with her mother, 𝗏𝐿 via cell phone communication using her subscriber number and issued by T-Mobile. During these conversations, there appeared to be more and more tension between her and Laundrie. On August 12, 2021, a report was generated by the Moab City Police Department referencing a domestic disturbance between the subjects and Laundrie. In the report, Officer Robbins wrote, after evaluating the totality of the circumstances, I do not believe that situation escalated to the level of domestic assault as much as that of a mental health crisis. He states that the subject was having a severe case of anxiety per the subject's testimony on scene. Laundrie also told the responding officers that he is concerned about the subject matter because her anxiety had worsened. We already talked about the Moab Police Department, right? On October 27th, 2021, the subject's mother, 𝗏𝐿 received an odd text from the subject. The text message read, "Can you help Stan? I just keep getting his voicemails and missed calls." The reference to Stan was regarding her grandfather, but per her mother, she never calls him Stan. The mother was concerned that something was wrong with her daughter. This was the last communication anyone had with the subject. Her cell phone was no longer operational, and she stopped posting anything on social media about their trip. But per her family, this was not normal behavior for the subject, and they became more worried about her. On September 11th, 2021, the subject was entered as a missing person by the Suffolk County Police Department in New York. Based on the reports from the Moab City Police, it appears the subject is also in danger due to mental health concerns. On September 11th, 2021, the subject's van, a white Ford Transit bearing Florida tags, was located at her address. Per the license plate reader installed at the Sumter Boulevard exit of Interstate 75, the vehicle entered the city of Northport on September 1st, 2021 at approximately 10:26 a.m. Brian Laundrie's family stated that the subject was not at the residence and they did not know her whereabouts. They refused to allow Brian to speak with law enforcement and directed the officers on scene to speak with their attorney. Based on the totality of the circumstances related to the subject's mental health, I believe there's probable cause to believe the subject is unable to care for herself due to her increased anxiety. Due to this behavior, our concerns for her welfare have been reached to an exigent level. Her cell phone has been turned off for approximately 15 days, and there have been no sightings of her since August 27th, 2021. On September 14th, 2021, at approximately 7 p.m., a signed warrant was executed for the subject's vehicle at the Northport Police Department. Within the subject's vehicle, the crime scene technician located the hard drive, digital external hand drive with serial number, etc. The computer external storage device is potentially the subject's property, and due to that, it may contain viable digital forensic data that could assist in the location of said missing endangered subject. Your affiant knows that the computer, hardware, software, and electronic devices may be important to a criminal investigation in two distinct ways. The objects themselves may be contraband, evidence, instrumentalities, or fruits of crime, and or the subjects may be used as a storage device that contains contraband, evidence, etc. This affidavit also requests permission to search for the computer hardware that may contain said data, and if becomes necessary for the reasons of practicality, to remove the hardware and conduct a search off-site. Your affiliate believes that in this case, the computer hardware is a container for evidence, a container for contraband, and also its instrumentality of the crime under investigation. Based on your affiant's knowledge, training, and experience, your affiant knows that searching and seizing information from computers often requires agents to seize most or all electronic devices to be searched later by a qualified computer expert in a laboratory or another controlled environment. This is because of the volume of the evidence. The sorting process can take weeks or months. Technical requirements, I'm not going to read through all that. Necessity to search files of variant formats. Necessity to search software. You're asking, what are they searching? This is a warrant for the computer. Wherefore your affiant respectfully requests that a search warrant be issued commanding all in singular the Sheriff and Deputies Director of Florida Highway Patrol and his troopers, the Commissioner of the Florida Department of Law, etc., either in the daytime or nighttime as the exigencies of the occasion may demand or require on Sunday. Evidence sought, any and all external storage devices, any digital documents, all data and all files associated with the external device, files that show emails, text messages, computers. So that was signed September 15, 2021. They want access to the computers found in the possession of Gabby and Brian, if I'm right. Received on the warrant on this day and executed the same on the 16th day of September 21 by reading this warrant to and delivering a true copy. Upon the completion of such search, a written inventory of the property taken was delivered to the aforementioned person. So there's a warrant for the computer. Moving on. Let me check in with you guys. Now let's get to Brian's journal entry. Let me pull it up. Hey, 𝗟𝗲FistiCuffs. Good to see you. Oh, thanks, Fast Dave. Oh, look at you. Look at you coming in hot. I see you. I see you. Hey, BC girl. Okay. You guys are talking about, I don't know what that is, Alberta. Okay, the next document. Wait, before we get to the letters. This is news release, U.S. Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigations, immediate release Wednesday, September 23rd, 2021. On Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021, the U.S. District Court of Wyoming issued a federal arrest warrant for Brian Christopher Laundrie. The warrant was issued for a violation of, et cetera, use of unauthorized devices relating to Ms. Laundrie's activities following the death of Gabby Petito. That's where Roberta comes into play, huh? While the warrant allows law enforcement to arrest Ms. Laundrie, the FBI and our partners across the country continue to investigate the facts and circumstances of Ms. Petito's homicide, said FBI Denver Special Agent in Charge Michael Schneider. We urge individuals with knowledge of Ms. Laundrie's role in this matter or his current, Mr. Laundrie's role in this matter, my apologies, or his current whereabouts to contact the FBI. No piece of information is too small or too inconsequential to support our efforts in this investigation. The FBI also continues to seek information from anyone who utilized the Spread Creek camping area between the dates of August 27th through the 30th, 2021, who may have had contact with Ms. Petito and Mr. Laundrie, or who may have seen their vehicles. I'm just being nosy. I haven't seen these. Oh, actual arrest warrant. Brian Christopher Laundrie. Indictment. Huh. On or about August 30th, count 1. Let me see if I zoomed in too much. This is indictment, count 1, filed September 22nd, 2021. On or about August 30th, 2021, through and including on or about September 1st, 2021, in the District of Wyoming and elsewhere, the defendant Brian Christopher Laundrie knowingly and with intent to defraud used one or more authorized devices, namely a Capital One bank debit card ending in 8774 and a PIN number, accounts ending in 0525. By such conduct, obtained things of value adding up to $1,000 or more during that period, which affected interstate commerce. So that's when Brian used Gabby's card, took her van. I can't believe the Laundries got away with what they did, and I'm shook. I'm upset. We are not Laundrie fans here. Okay, I have the police report, but let's get to the Brian Laundrie notes first. Actually, I want to play the police body cam footage of the Laundries. This is long too. Yeah, the Laundries are unbelievable. Yeah, they lied. They lied for him, try to cover it up. That's really ridiculous. Yeah, it is ridiculous. Okay, I'm going to pull up the letters. Brian Laundrie's notebook. I'm going to pull up the actual letters, but then I'm going to read it to you. Should have been more prepared. Here we go. So these notes were found in a notebook that Brian had, and it was found when his body was found. June 24th, 2022, regarding Brian Laundrie. Today, the Petito family attorney, Patrick Riley, and myself met with the FBI in Tampa to sort through and take possession of personal items that belong to Gabby and Brian. This was previously agreed upon exchange to enable both the Petitos and the Laundries to receive what belonged to the respective children. As part of the return of the property in FBI custody, I was given Brian's notebook. I would like to share with the public the note that the FBI alluded to when they said on January 21st, 2022, that Brian claimed responsibility for the death of Gabby. Although I have chosen to release this matter as a matter of transparency, I will not be commenting further as there are still proceedings pending in court. These are Brian's words. This is the journal entry. Y'all can't read it. Don't worry, I got you. I went through this myself. So it says, this is Brian writing to Gabby. Gabby, I wish I was right at your side. I wish I could be talking to you now. I'm sick going through every memory we made, getting even more exotic for the future, which I think is excited. We have apparently lost our future together. I can't be without you, Laundrie wrote. I've lost every day we've spent together, every holiday. I loved you more than anything, he went on. I can't bear to look at our phone photos to recall great times because it is why I cannot go on. When I close my eyes, I will think of lounging on the roof of the van, falling asleep at the sight of a meteor shower at the Crystal Geyser. I will always love you. Crystal Geyser refers to a location in Green River, Utah. Hello, Ajem. Hi, Bean Bio Girl. Good to see you, love. They brought Brian to own life himself, or they did it and put a tracking device. It's insane. It's insane. Second page. If you were reading Gab's journal, looking at photos from our life together, flipping through old cards, you wouldn't want to live a day without her. Knowing that every day you'll wake up without her, you wouldn't want to wake up. I'm sorry to everyone this will affect. Gabby was the love of my life, but I know she's beloved by so many. I'm so very sorry to her family because I love them. I consider her young siblings my best friends. And then some of it is scratched out. I couldn't read some of it. I am sorry to my family. This a shock to them as well as terrible grief. They loved as much, if not more than me. A new daughter to my mother and aunt to my nephews. Please do not make this harder for them. It's ineligible, so I really tried. Is as unexpected tragedy, redacted, back to our car trying to cross the streams of a creek before it got too dark to see, too cold. I hear a splash and a scream. I could barely see. I couldn't find her for a moment. I shouted her name. I found her breathing heavily, gasping my name. She was freezing cold. We had just come from the blazing hot national parks. I have questions about this. I'm very concerned. Yeah, your mom lied. Your mom didn't care about Gabby. She cared more about protecting her son. We had just come from the blazing hot national parks in Utah. The temperature had dropped to freezing and she was soaking wet. I carried her as far as I could down the stream toward the car, stumbling, exhausted and shocked, when my knees buckled and I knew I couldn't safely carry her. I started a fire and spooned her as close to the heat. She was so thin, had already been freezing too long. I couldn't at the time realize that I should have started a fire at first, but I wanted her out of the cold back to the car. From where I started the fire, I had no idea how far the cart might be. Only knew it was across the creek. When I pulled Gabby out of the water, she couldn't tell me what hurt. She had a small bump on her forehead and eventually got larger. I couldn't read some of these words here. I scratched, some of them are scratched out. Redacted. Her feet hurt. Her wrist hurt, but she was freezing, shaking violently. While carrying her, she continually made sounds of pain. Laying next to her, she said, little gasping between violent shakes, gasping in pain, begging for an end to her pain. She would fall asleep. I would shake her awake, fearing she shouldn't close her eyes if she had a concussion. I'm shook. Had you guys read these before? I'm just curious. I need to touch base with you guys because what the heck? He's talking about her, I think, when he hit her, the blunt force trauma to the head. Why would he write this? I would like to know. Lies. Lies. Hey, Joey, good to see you. Guys, what is this? This is like some manifesto that he left behind about Gabby. What is wrong with him? I'm just curious. The 6th page. She would wake in pain, start a whole painful cycle again, while furious that I was the one waking her. She wouldn't let me to try to cross the creek. Thought like me that fire would go out in her sleep and she'd freeze. I don't know the extent of Gabby's injuries, only that she was in extreme pain. I ended her life. I thought it was merciful, thought that it was what she wanted, but I see now all the mistakes I made. I panicked. I was in shock. But from the moment I decided I took her pain away, I knew I couldn't go on without her. Wait, was this actually Brian Laundrie? Or was it Roberta? By the way, we're just commentating here. I'm not no legal person. We're just going through these documents. Yeah. Even in death, right? He didn't tell the truth. So sad. Go to the hospital. Right. So this guy, yes, he unalived himself. I have not heard of it, all of it, Melly. Okay, good. He was excusing him hitting her. He did. He hit her in the head. No, this is the first time I'm hearing this. Yay. Hello, Tony. It could be Robert. I mean, how do we know that Brian wrote this, right? That was just a journal that they found on his person. But like, was it Roberta Laundrie? Oh boy. I hadn't read these, so I'm glad you guys are here listening. I'm going to continue. I rushed home to spend my time I had left with my family. I wanted to drive north and let James or TJ unalive me, but I wouldn't want them to spend time in jail over my mistake, even though I'm sure they would have liked to. I am ending my life not because of a fear of punishment, but rather because I can't stand to live another day without her. I've lost our whole future together. Every moment we could have cherished. I'm sorry for everyone's loss. Please do not make life harder for my family. They lost a son and a daughter, the most wonderful girl in the world. Gabby, I'm sorry. Please do not make please do not make life harder for my family. What did Augie say? She just liked to liar, Larry. Oh, that's a good one. Laundry on fire. He was a creep. Even her friend said he would always sit back. Yeah. I lived myself by this creek in the hopes that animals may tear me apart, that it may make some of her family happy. Please pick up all of my things. Gabby hated people who litter. The only 2 people who could vouch for the veracity of this version of the events are now dead. I have killed myself in this creek in the hopes that animals may tear me apart. We saw in the autopsy that that's exactly what happened. So he wrote this and then he went and unalived himself? Or is this Roberta Laundrie who wrote this? His mom and dad knew the whole time. Hey, 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲. Oh, I hope everything's okay. Sending prayers. I think he did what his mom wanted him to do. Unalive himself? Yes, that is weird. I did notice that too. A coward. Yeah, 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲. I hope everything's okay. That's it. That was the end of the journal entries. What do you guys think? Is that Brian? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Let me pull up the next document. He would have written, I will do this and you will find me. He is talking past tense. Right. I'm going to play the body cam footage. I do want to go over we're going to go over the police report, and then we'll get into the lawsuit with the Moab Police Department, and then we'll call it a night. But I do have the body cam footage from when the authorities showed up to the Petitos, or the Laundrie's house, my bad. Hey. Good to see you. Good to see you, Plib. Glad you made it. We're going to watch, it's like a minute long, and then I really want to read the lawsuit against the Moab Police Department. There's so many documents, I was shook. I was so excited. I have over 1,500 pages on the case, so it was really hard to like pick what I was going to talk about first, but I'm trying to go date by date. So just work with your girl. Hey again, Stall Logic. Okay, I'm going to play the body cam footage of the Laundries, and then I want to get into the lawsuit against the Moab Police Department. If you didn't watch the number 2 deep dive, they're all labeled too, by the way. Part 1, part 2, part 3. One of them we go over when I read for 4 hours. That was the whole investigation against the Moab Police Department, because they made mistakes, right, in the Gabby case, and how they handled them, pulling them over and whatnot. So you can go there and get all the details. I'm sure they're going to be in the lawsuit we're going to cover right now. But let's watch the body cam footage. This is really short. It's like 1 minute.
Hi, sir. I apologize for bothering you. I have the detective on the phone.
I'm not talking to anybody.
You don't want to talk to us?
No.
Okay, she's on the phone. You don't want to talk to her now?
No.
Okay, when was the last time that you saw Brian and Gabriel?
Well, Brian is here.
Brian is here?
And that's all I'm saying.
And that's why you're saying?
Yeah, we have an attorney. They've been calling. I don't know. That's all I want to say. I don't know why there's so many attorneys aware.
Okay.
They're calling. So I can give you his number.
Whose number? The attorney's number?
Yeah.
Okay, I would like that, please, so I can give it to the detective. Thank you.
Chris, this is Sergeant Selzer with the police department.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I hate to bother you. I know you've already said you don't want to speak or don't want to help us. I'm trying to figure out something for parents. You guys as parents, all they want is their daughter to know that she's safe. So I don't know where it all started before. I don't know what's transpired. I don't know anything.
Okay, I have a different clip. That really, right. I know. I feel you. We know they're lying. Brian's in there too. In the next part of the body cam, they admit that he's like in the house. I actually like this. I'm gonna play this by News Nation. I like this clip. It's a little bit longer than the first one, but they knew exactly what happened. That's what I said. Zero concern for Gabby, not even a little. I mean, what would you do? I'm curious. I don't have kids, but would you lie and cover up for your son if something like this went down? I'm close to my parents. And although I could say that like my dad has had my back on a lot of stuff, unaliving someone, yeah, no. He probably would be like, Melly, go turn yourself in or something, right? Let's watch this. It's only a few minutes left.
His mother reported her missing. Now, when you take a look at this, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie dodge and resist every single question from the Northport officers on their doorstep. I mean, you can't believe it, but it's right there, and you're going to hear it. All while Brian, Gabby's fiance and killer, is somewhere inside the house. And they say he's in the house.
Hi,
and there's also the van he drove back to Florida alone. That's in the driveway. The footage was obtained by Fox News Digital. Take a look.
We're going to watch it again. I'm obsessed.
I felt was here last night.
Yeah. Okay. So is this her vehicle? Her van?
It's both of them.
Is both of them? Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Wait,
Chris, this is Sergeant 𝐿𝐴𝐿 with the police department.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I hate to bother
it's not both of their van. That was Gabby's van. He stole it.
you. I know you've already said you don't want to speak or don't want to help us. I'm trying to figure out something for parents. You guys as parents, you know, all they want is their daughter to know that she's safe. So I don't know where it all started before. I don't know what's transpired. I don't know anything about that. I'm here to know if you guys know anything. It would let the parents at ease and go from there.
Well, we don't know anything.
Okay.
And that's all.
I mean, anything that you guys would be able to give them is any type of help. Last time your son saw her, anything like that. Am I able to talk to your son? The other officer said
he's not going to talk to anybody.
Okay.
We're not going to talk to anybody.
Okay. I mean, I'm gonna lay it out for you if you want. The New York detectives are a little pissed, and they want me to do a whole bunch of things that I'm trying to
Well,
avoid.
then you have to do what you got to do, and we're not going to. That's that.
Okay. I mean, as a parent, you wouldn't want to know where it happened with
I
your.
understand what you're saying, but thank you.
I mean,
No, we're not going to.
it makes it very odd, don't you think? From my point of view,
Well,
Chris.
goodbye. For now, you can call our attorney and give your phone number.
I don't have your attorney, and an attorney's not going to answer at 10,
No,
11
no,
o'clock at night.
I'm not speaking to anybody.
Yeah, we're not comfortable
Without an
talking to
attorney,
anybody.
so that's that.
Can you imagine? All they had to do was say, Brian's right here behind the door. He's in the house. Bring him out. Let the police talk to him. But they didn't do that. They didn't answer anything. 8 days later, Gabby's body was found in a national park in Wyoming. And weeks after that, Brian killed himself at a Florida nature preserve, leaving behind a confession to killing Gabby. And how exactly do I know the date about Gabby's body being found? Well, it's because I was standing in Wyoming with Gabby's stepfather, 𝐁𝐿𝐴𝐿, when he got an urgent phone call from the FBI telling him the awful news. He had just been telling me how they were hopeful that they would find Gabby, that she would still turn up. Because remember, the van was found over in that camping area? That had just happened. We were having a conversation and the phone rang. That was 3 years ago last week. Afterward, I walked through the very spot where investigators found Gabby's remains.
We're in the Bridger Teton National
I thought
Forest.
this was interesting.
Here is where investigators found the remains of Gabby Petito. You can see how beautiful this area is and how expansive it is. There are 300,000 acres of land just beyond that fence line. That is where the Grand Teton National Park begins. But on the other side of this fence, when investigators got their tip of where she had her van parked, you can see here there are many markers with orange spray paint. They're on trees, they're on rocks. There's even one right over there on this tree that leads to this.
So that little patch of earth where you saw those flowers and rocks under a sun-drenched tree, and you could hear the creek in the background, is where investigators brought 𝐁𝐿𝐴𝐿 to show him where they found Gabby. He wanted to see the spot where Gabby was found for himself and pay his respects, which he did.
Thanks for
That is so sad. We love her dad, Joe Petito. He's awesome. All right, we're going to go through the police department really quick, and then we who have been here the last few lives know a lot about what's in these documents already. We're just going to kind of go through it. Missing persons, Northport Police Department, September 17th, 2021. This will be good. Narrative. On Friday, September 17, 2021, I arrived at 𝗏𝗶𝗸𝗲 Avenue for a report of a missing person, Brian Laundrie. Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, parents of Brian, were the complainants of the incident. Christopher and Roberta explained that Brian was last seen on Tuesday, September 14, 2021 at approximately 9:30 a.m. They explained that Brian had said he was going to go hiking at the 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃, I always say that wrong, 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 Creek Environmental Park. Roberta and Christopher were unsure what Brian was wearing, when he had left, but they said he usually wears a t-shirt and shorts. They said he had taken his brown hiking backpack, unknown brand, but they were still unsure what the contents were. Christopher and Roberta said that Brian appeared to be his normal self and didn't show any out of ordinary behavior when he had left that morning to go hiking. They said that Brian was an avid hiker and liked to go to the 𝗦𝘂𝗯𝗃 in the past. I'm totally butchering that too. I'm kind of embarrassed. Christopher and Roberta said that they had not received any communication from Brian since he had left on Tuesday. They had located Brian's cell phone at the residence, and they did not believe that he had another phone on or any type of electronic communication device. Both said that Brian did not say when he was coming back from the hike, which to them was not suspicious or out of the ordinary. Christopher explained that when Brian had not come back the following day on Wednesday, September 15th, he went to the park and located the vehicle he had left unoccupied. Christopher said he had walked some of the trail that Brian had, and he walked in the past and had not been able to locate him. Christopher said there was a note on the vehicle from a park attendant saying that the vehicle needed to be removed in a certain amount of time or it would be towed. Christopher said that they left the vehicle there that day in the event that Brian was staying in the woods and returned to it the following day to come home. Wait. They located the vehicle. Christopher was familiar with the area and the trail. There was a note on the car. And they just left. They just left it there. They weren't concerned. No, because he was a hiker, but Christopher said that he went there on Thursday, September 16th, and the vehicle was still parked there unoccupied with the note on it. Christopher explained that he had removed the vehicle and brought it back home so it would not be towed. The vehicle was checked to see if Brian's backpack or any belongings were inside, and nothing was found. A full description of Brian was given. He is a white male, 5'8", approximately 160 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes, unknown exact clothing he had last been seen wearing, but it's usually t-shirt and shorts. Unknown footwear, trimmed facial hair. Tattoos are as follows: leaves on his hands, a leaf on his ankle, and a bender, a robot from Futurama, on his buttocks. Wait, did y'all know that? I'm shook. I didn't know that. All missing persons paperwork was completed. There were also some of Brian's clothing that were voluntarily given to us by Christopher and Roberta to be used for a scent search in the area of the park. A property receipt was collected for those items, and they eventually turned over to Northport Canine officers. Wow. I didn't know. If you didn't know, you found out here. A butt tattoo. Futurama too. Wow. Wow. I know. While on scene, Christopher explained that both Brian and 𝗏𝗏𝗃 he did not want in the residence. Christopher wanted the police department to take 𝗏𝗏𝗃. I collected a total of 𝗏𝗏𝗃 from the residence, and they were placed in our property room for safekeeping. A property receipt was also completed. Brian was entered into the NCIC as a missing and endangered person. Names involved: Laundrie. Can we call her? Hey, eyes never lie. Good to see you. I always check my roster before breaking up with someone. Stop it right now. Ass tat. That's right. Roberta Maria Laundrie, white female, 55, of Wabasso Avenue, date of birth 1966. The other involved is Brian Christopher Laundrie, white male, not 23 years old, so I was wrong about that. Northport, Florida, date of birth 1997. Dang, they gave all the details in here. Hey, Right? This is what you can go and get this yourself from the Northport Police Department. Hey, Jenna Gypsy. Property list, recovered location, Wabasso. Owner, Laundrie, Christopher, redacted. We're just reading through this police department. We already know basically all of this. I was just wanting to be nosy. I have a lot of pictures. Narrative. On September 21st, on this day, I was tasked with checking for surveillance camera at residences. Detective Cooper and I checked several streets in the northern part of the city. We checked redacted, had no exterior cameras, and the interior was under construction. Nobody was on site. Redacted has exterior cameras. A business card was left in the front door. On September 23rd, 2021, the homeowner, redacted, called and advised that his exterior cameras only capture directly around his house and not out to the roadway, as his residence is set far back from the road and is surrounded by trees. I asked redacted to check his cameras between September 13th and September 15th for suspicious activities. Redacted called me back later and advised he did not see any suspicious activity on his surveillance during those days. Redacted has exterior cameras. However, the homeowner advised that they do not work. Redacted has exterior, this was like neighbors, gated with 2 large dogs. Nobody came to the gate. Another neighbor has exterior cameras. They were basically scoping out who saw what. Detective Weigel and I were tasked with checking for surveillance around the residences of 𝗃𝗃 Boulevard. Due to a tip about a subject seeing a vehicle parked in the parking lot of redacted, we checked this area for cameras. The redacted interior was vacant and under construction, and nobody was on site. We also drove up to the Walton Ranch Preserve, but due to seasonal flooding, the gates were locked and the park was closed, so we were unable to check the area. The rest of the addresses checked are as follows. I'm not going to read through the neighbor stuff. There was no surveillance available. On September 22nd, I was asked with checking redacted for any exterior cameras that face the roadway. I did not observe any cameras outside and confirmed with management that they had no exterior cameras. I was then tasked along with other detectives to check the area of redacted and redacted to look for surveillance cameras. On 9/15, I received information from Sergeant that members of the SET team and members of the SIU were to begin surveillance. On Monday, September 27th, at approximately 0700 hours, the Northport Police Department Special Response Team conducted rural operations training in the area north of the Creek Environmental Park located at Reisterstown Road. This area is east of the Big Slough Canal and northern of the Southern Power Line. While conducting our training, various search patterns near the Prosper hiking trail at approximately 010 hours, I located a camouflage visor hanging from a half-broken tree branch on the hiking trail. The visor was a Costa brand hunting visor with the orange C symbol. The inside of the visor had also had orange coloring and was partially white. The GPS coordinates where the visor was found, etc. The hat was photographed and placed along with the GPS coordinates prior to me collecting the visor, using gloves and sealing the hat inside a plastic bag. The visor did appear to have small hairs on the brim, unknown whether they were animal or human. The location where the visor was found was marked with yellow caution tape in the event we needed to return to this area. After the hat was secured, members of the SRT team thoroughly checked the surrounding area using redacted while walking through flooded high water areas. Eventually, we continued north until we reached the North Power Line Road and then went east and located a large steel box, which was roughly 10 foot by 5 wide and was on platform. I don't know what that means. The box was located at the GPS coordinates, and this box did not have anything inside of evidentiary value, but could have been used to keep dry if someone was looking for shelter. The camouflage visor was submitted to MPPD evidence room. Other names: Digital Forensic Lab, camouflage visor. Dang, we're getting all the tea. Photographs of the visor. On October 26, 2021, the Northport Police Department received notification from Dr. Vega of the medical examiner's office confirmed the identities found at the Carlton Reserve on October 20th by comparison to known dental records of Brian Laundrie. We went through the medical examiner report in the last slide, so you can always go back and watch that. Based on the investigation gathered, it was discovered on September 13, 2021 at approximately 9 a.m. Brian entered a 2012 Ford Mustang with Florida tags and then traveled to the Creek Environmental Park. On September 14, 2021, the Northport Police Department was called to the park where an officer located the vehicle. The vehicle appeared not to have moved due to the grass of the park was mowed and the grass under and around the vehicle was overgrown. On September 15, 2021, the Laundrie family responded to the Creek Environmental Park where they picked up the Mustang utilizing a spare key. It was later determined that Brian Laundrie was not in the vehicle when it was returned home. On September 17, 2021 at approximately 6 p.m., the Laundrie family completed a missing person report for their son, Brian Laundrie, who is a target subject of the investigation. Based on this information, coupled with Brian Christopher Laundrie now alleged disappearance, finding his whereabouts is paramount to his well-being and the investigation. Detectives met with Laundrie's parents, Christopher and Roberta, who advised that, I always get her name wrong. I'm happy about it, who advised that redacted, but they believed they were all in the residence. However, upon verifying whether the redacted were still in the home, it was discovered that redacted was missing, at which point Christopher and Roberta became concerned for their son's safety and thought there's a possibility he may harm himself. Oh, are they talking about the GU and the guns? Based on the totality of the situation, there's concern for Brian Christopher Laundrie's mental health and that he may be a danger to himself and that he possesses a real and present threat of substantial harm to his well-being. So law enforcement has been using technology to find his location with negative results. On September 18th, a tip was received with a photograph showing a male matching the description of Brian Laundrie. The male was walking down Ulster Avenue, which is directly behind the Laundrie's home. Detective Jarvis and I conducted a neighborhood canvass on Ulster Avenue to attempt to identify this unknown male. Contact was made with neighbors who live on Ulster Avenue, and no one was able to assist in identifying the unknown male in the photograph. A few days later, the same unknown male again began walking the neighborhood, and law enforcement was able to identify him, which was not Brian Laundrie. Detective Jarvis and I also responded to South Meadow Terrace to make contact with Nico, who stated that she worked at Publix with Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito, who she referred to as, well, Gabby. Nicole stated that she was not close with Brian, but knew him to be very quiet and kept to himself a lot. Nicole said she was friends with Gabby at work, but did not hang out with her outside of that. Nicole advised that she was following Brian and Gabby's trip on social media and would communicate with Gabby through the comment and reply section on Gabby's post. On September 20th, 2021, Detective Keller, Detective Pulse, and I assisted the FBI in residential search warrant executed at the Laundrie residence. On September 21st, I responded to the Walmart Supercenter where I met with loss prevention agent who was able to locate the purchases and details of redacted for the Alcatel cell phone Brian and his mother, Roberta, made on September 4th, 2021 at 1:50 p.m. Oh. So Roberta and Brian went to the Walmart Supercenter to buy a phone, a burner phone. This redacted was forwarded to the FBI and also uploaded to evidence. Why is it? She needs to get arrested. I'm shook. On September 23rd, the Northport Police Department was asked to complete a follow-up interview with employees of the Northport AT&T store. Detective Alex and I responded to the AT&T store where we met with the store manager and her coworker. It was discovered through the investigation that Brian Laundrie and his mother entered the store, and she stated that they wanted to remove Brian from her account. But Brian provided his driver's license and purchased a SIM card. The employee explained that they could purchase a device from any store, and she advised that they left to go to Walmart. When they returned, she advised her coworker would help them install the SIM card. We then spoke with the employee who advised Brian after his mother returned to the AT&T store with the phone they purchased from Walmart. She asked Brian if he needed any assistance with installing the SIM card he purchased earlier. Brian stated that he knew how to do it, and they left the store. Since the beginning of the case and the last location of Brian being the Creek Environmental Park, Northport Police Department, along with numerous local agencies, have been conducting search and rescue missions led by Commander Joseph, and will continue until he is located. Furthermore, hundreds of tips have been coming into the Northport Police Department in reference to Brian Laundrie's location. Multiple detectives have been researching every tip for their validity and will be completing supplemental records that will be submitted into the Northport Police Department. On October 7th, a dental records request was sent to 𝗟𝗏, who confirmed that he was a patient, and they confirmed the paperwork. On October 11th, the dentistry contacted me to advise they would not release any records without a subpoena, which the FBI later approved. On October 20th, at approximately 8:21 a.m., detectives of the Northport Police Department located bones in the Carlton Preserve believed at the time to be Brian's remains. On October 26th, Northport Police Department received a notification from the medical examiner's office confirming the identities found at the Carlton Reserve, and they were Brian Laundrie. This case can be closed. Crime scene investigation in lab photography. On Thursday, September 30th, the Northport Police Department, the following items were obtained from the Northport Police Processing Lab. Captain requested the items be used for K9 to be photographed. I opened the large paper bag, which contained several smaller bags inside. Inside each bag were the following: shorts, the North Face brand baseball cap, a pillowcase, a Xeon brand baseball cap, and a pair of Columbia brand sandals. The items were photographed and then placed back in their original packaging. And they're just talking about the property. At approximately 0800 hours on Thursday, September 30th, I was contacted by Captain Harvey, requested crime scene respond to the cow camp area located within the Carlton Reserve to document and collect possible shoe print impressions. Captain Harvey advised that upon numerous officers searching the area, they located shoe print impressions in the cow camp area. Since my crime scene van would not get through the terrain, Captain Harvey advised that I would be picked up. Wait, so were those Brian's? The weather during my examination was sunny and approximately 79 degrees. One shoe print impression located in the dirt. The crime scene investigation concluded at approximately 10 and 12 hours on September 30th. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that, BC girl. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, you always support me. I love you and I appreciate you. Thank you. You're so sweet. I appreciate that. Okay, we're going to go through one more document. This is what I wanted to hear about. Petitos against the Moab City Police Department. The plaintiffs are the parents of Gabby Petito. Gabby was an aspiring van life travel influencer who was brutally murdered by her abusive fiance and travel companion, Brian Laundrie. Roughly 2 weeks before Brian murdered Gabby, while the couple was visiting Moab, Utah, a witness saw Brian hit Gabby. The witness immediately called 911 to report the incident. Gabby contacted her family to tell them that the couple had been fighting, that Brian had hit her, and that the police had been called. The family responded by beginning to arrange for Gabby to fly home and have her van shipped home to separate her from Brian. I'm so upset. Thank you, BC girl. We love you too. So it goes back to like the other parts of the deep dive, right? if they would have been separated, we knew that her family would have shown up, right? And they would have been separated. So then they wouldn't have met up the next day. And he wouldn't have killed her? Question mark. Gabby contacted her family to tell them that the couple had been fighting, that Brian had hit her, and that the police, I'm sorry, I already read that. Not me repeating myself. Moab police found the couple and investigated the reported domestic violence incident. Once the Moab Police Department stepped in, Gabby's family stepped back, believing that the situation was being appropriately handled and evaluated by competent authorities. The police investigation was deeply flawed. We know. We read the whole investigation report. Despite the witness report, the officers treated Brian as if he were the victim of domestic abuse rather than the perpetrator. In fact, the officers never really questioned Brian about whether he hit Gabby or how she ended up with the scratches on her face. They failed to recognize or otherwise identify the obvious signs clearly indicating that Gabby was a victim of domestic abuse, including her assuming responsibility for the fight with Brian, even though she described Brian grabbing her face so violently that it scratched her cheeks and drew blood. The officers egregiously misinterpreted Gabby's extreme emotional distress, seeing it as is the cause of domestic violence rather than its result. Officer Pratt, in particular, was fundamentally biased in his approach to the investigation, choosing to believe Gabby's abuser, ignoring evidence that Gabby was a victim, and intentionally looking for loopholes to get around the requirements of Utah law and his duty to protect Gabby. And Officer Pratt has since explained that at the time of the traffic stop, he believed that Brian was emotionally and mentally abusing Gabby, that Gabby did not, in fact, assault Brian, and that Brian had used physical force on Gabby by grabbing her face, which left a cut on her face. We know how we feel about Officer Pratt. This is so sad. These police officers were gross. We've already known. We know how bad it was, but yeah, Pratt the fat butt. The Utah legislature has removed discretion from officers investigating domestic violence incidents. The law imposes protection against future harm, including an automatic protective order to ensure that the abuser and the victim remain separated. But here, the officers, based on their tragic failure to identify Brian as an abuser, or far worse, based on the refusal to treat Brian as an abuser, despite Officer Pratt's assessment that Brian was mentally and emotionally abusive and had just used physical force against Gabby, coached Gabby to provide answers that the officers used to justify their decisions not to enforce Utah law. The case is a vehicle for a systemic change and a reckoning about how the police enforce the state's domestic abuse laws. First, police cannot continue to assert immunity under Utah law to avoid accountability for their actions that result in wrongful death. Second, the police must be trained and implement effective methods for evaluating domestic abuse situations so that the police can adequately protect victims according to the clear priorities mandated by the Utah legislature. Third, police departments must stop hiring and or retaining officers who engaged in prior professional misconduct or who have personal biases making them unfit and safe to serve as members of the police force. Gabby's death constituted a wrongful death resulting from the defendant's negligence. Notwithstanding case law from the Utah Supreme Court, plaintiffs are prepared to demonstrate that the case in question must be overturned because it relied on incorrect assessment. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a part. That the state is immune in cases of wrongful death. Plaintiffs are prepared to demonstrate that the case in question must be overturned because it relied on incorrect assessment of history of the Utah's wrongful death actions. The Utah Constitution prohibits the legislator from abrogating the right of action for wrongful death. And at the time the Utah Constitution was drafted, that right of action included the right to assert against the state a claim for wrongful death arising from negligence. Inside the Utah Constitution enshrined the common understanding that no one, including a state official, such as a police officer, enjoys immunity for negliging causing the death of another. Gabby did not have to die. Gabby would still be alive if the Moab Police Department had not hired, retained, and or failed to train officers who were fundamentally unfit and safe to employ in the capacity of a police officer. Gabby would still be alive if the police officers had competently and properly investigated Brian's reported abuse and enforced Utah's law that were designated to remove the officer's discretion to disregard abuse. Gabby would still be alive if Officer Pratt had not intentionally coached Gabby and manipulated the investigation to try to find loopholes that would allow him to disregard the mandates of Utah law and his duty to protect Gabby. Defendant's negligence and Officer Pratt's willful misconduct deprived Gabby of her safety and ultimately her life. Gabby's parents have been deprived of Gabby's companionship, love, and affection, and the fulfillment of the hopes that all parents cherish for the children's future. I didn't know this. It was actually unreal how biased they were. I had no idea that they had blamed Officer Pratt like directly in this lawsuit. I'm actually kind of shook. I'm not gonna lie. We read the Moab police investigation report first, but this is wild. Plaintiff Gabby Petito, now deceased, was relevant at the Times of North Sarasota, Florida. Joseph Petito, Nicole Schmidt, her mom, Moab Police Department, defendant Brett Edge, Police Department. Eric Pratt was at relevant times an officer with the Moab City Police Department. He's currently a detective. Daniel Robbins is the other detective we read a lot about in the investigation report. All were relevant at the times. Plaintiffs will post a bond and determined by the court as required. Factual allegations. Plaintiffs incorporate by this reference all previous paragraphs as fully set forth below. In 2021, Gabby Petito was a 22-year-old traveling the country with her fiance, Brian Laundrie. Gabby had converted a van into a camper to use in her travels as an aspiring van life travel influencer. In the summer of 2021, Gabby and Brian traveled from New York to the Western United States, visiting multiple national parks, which Gabby documented on social media, including Instagram and YouTube. On or around August 12th, 2021, Brian and Gabby were visiting Moab, Utah. Brian and Gabby spent much of the day in a coffee shop where Gabby worked on her social media business. Brian and Gabby had been fighting much of the day, which eventually led to Brian physically and publicly assaulting Gabby outside the Moonflower Community Cooperative. At some point prior to the interaction with Moab Police Department, Brian grabbed Gabby by the face so forcefully that he cut her cheek and drew blood. Gabby took a photograph of her injury, which shows blood across her nose and left eye. Gabby pointed out the injury to Officer Pratt, but he ignored her and did nothing more to investigate or document the injury. A witness observed Brian hitting Gabby and called 911 to report the incident. The witness reported seeing a domestic dispute, explaining that as the witness was driving by, he saw the gentleman slapping the girl. He said they ran up and down the sidewalk. He proceeded to hit her, hopped in the car, and then they drove off. Another witness later reported seeing Brian hit Gabby with a closed fist, causing her to fall against the side of the van with her backpack and probably her head. Is that when she got that black eye that we saw in the first live? This is so sad. And like, that wasn't the first time, right? So like, can you imagine everything that Gabby was living through? I think as much as her parents are trying to do good in the world and use it for that, I don't see how this could be easy in any sense. Especially when you didn't know what was going on, right? Yeah, he was beating her. I think there was a lot of domestic violence going on and nobody knew it. They were always on the road, right? And they were always doing their own thing, so. Dispatch alerted officers about a man who reportedly hit a woman that drove northbound on Main Street away from the co-op. Officer Eric Pratt went to the co-op to investigate and got the phone number of a second witness. While at the co-op, Officer Pratt failed to activate his body cam camera as required and failed to locate and talk to the 911 caller who reported Brian hitting Gabby. From the investigative report we read in the last live, they called the wrong person. So these incompetent cops called the wrong person to get a statement. I do not want to be getting pulled over or in any kind of trouble by them. Her parents must be so angry at how many people failed her. I agree, BC girl. Using the information provided by dispatch officer Daniel Robbins located Gabby and Brian's van speeding northward, leaving Moab, and turned his lights on to pull them over. Officer Robbins watched the van across a double yellow line in the center of the road and swerved back to the right, hitting the curb on the side of the road. He turned on his siren and pulled over the van. Inside the van, Officer Robbins found Gabby visibly distraught sitting in the passenger seat alongside Brian in the driver's seat. Brian was calm and showed no signs of distress. When Officer Robbins asked what was going on and why Gabby was crying, Gabby said they had been fighting over personal issues. Brian explained that it had been a long day because there was a lot of flies where they had been camping the prior day, then changed the subject to apologize for driving into the curb. What do the flies have to do with anything? That's a reason for you to put hands on your girlfriend? Officer Robbins asked Gabby to step out of the van, separating Gabby and Brian. Officer Robbins spoke with Gabby, who continued crying while explaining that she and Brian had been fighting and that it had been a rough morning for a few reasons. First, she told Officer Robbins that she and Brian were fighting because she had been cleaning the van and had apologized to Brian about giving the impression that she was in a bad mood. Second, she said they were fighting because she was working hard to start a travel blog, which kept her busy all morning working on her computer, and that Brian did not believe that she was capable of succeeding. This is already like huge red flags to me right now. Like, I'm like, wait, he's getting mad about her cleaning. He's getting mad about her working and controlling her. Third, she explained they were fighting because Brian was preventing her from getting into the van because he believed she needed to calm down. While Officer Robbins spoke with Gabby, Ryan Krall, park ranger, and Officer Pratt arrived and began to speak with Brian. Eventually, Officer Robbins finished speaking with Gabby and had her sit in the police car while he joined Officer Pratt and Ranger Krall to speak with him. Brian calmly told the officers that although he and Gabby had been fighting, they had a nice morning, but that Gabby had gotten worked up while they were trying to get to their van, packed up, and get their day going. Officer Robbins noted scratches on Brian's face and asked about them. Brian explained that he had taken Gabby's phones, locked the van, and told Gabby to take a breather and calm down, at which point she tried to take her phone and the keys from Brian. Brian admitted that he responded by pushing Gabby, and while that was happening, Gabby scratched Brian's face. Wait, so pushing is not putting your hands on someone when it's in a domestic violence situation? Men don't behave like that, animal. That is strange for him to mention flies, right? Ticking time bomb. You're right. He had all turned around. I mean, right. Officer Pratt then spoke with Gabby. She elaborated on what the Officer Robbins had told her, explaining that she was cleaning the van, and because she knows she can appear to have a mean attitude about how things are organized in 𝐁𝐿EVE, she apologized to Brian if she seemed like she was acting mean. I have so much to say about that because I'm very much that person. Like, everything has to be clean and organized. But Brian here is just abusive. She said, I was apologizing, but I guess I said it in a mean tone because Brian got really frustrated and locked me out of the car and told me to go take a breather. But she didn't want to take a breather. They were out of water. She was thirsty. She wanted to get going with her day. She also did not want to be locked out of the car, thousands of miles away from home, without her cell phone. She was also in the middle of a project on her laptop, which was locked inside the car. Officer Pratt responded by observing that Brian's reaction did not calm the situation, but made Gabby more upset. He then asked Gabby about scratches on her face and on her arm, pointing out multiple scratches, and asked what happened. Gabby initially hesitated and claimed she wasn't sure. She said she was trying to get into the back of the van and there's a backpack on the back of the van that scratched her. Officer Pratt then told Gabby that a couple of witnesses had reported seeing Brian punch Gabby. Wait, okay, so right here, this is the big fail, right? This is why this is the lawsuit. If a witness told you that, why would you disregard it? Sounds like he's like, I don't know, Fast Dave. I don't know about that, but I definitely think he had mental health issues. Not that everyone who has mental health issues ends up being violent. That's not what I'm saying. But I think there was a lot going on here. And for a long time. Gabby responded by saying that she had slapped Brian first because he kept telling me to shut up, and that Brian then grabbed her arms so she wouldn't be able to slap him again. Officer Pratt asked Brian if he had hit Gabby, and if Brian had hit Gabby, and she responded, "I guess, but I hit him first." She showed the officer how Brian had grabbed her face, explaining that he must have cut her cheek with his nails because she could feel the cut burning when she touched her face. Officer Pratt failed to ask any questions about or document the cut on Gabby's face or further investigate Brian's violently grabbing Gabby's head and face. Officer Pratt did not ask about whether Brian had ever locked Gabby out of their van before or taken away her cell phone and laptop or otherwise acted in a way to exercise control over Gabby. Officer Pratt also did not ask about whether Brian had ever been violent with Gabby before. Officer Pratt did not consider the asymmetrical seriousness of the force Gabby used on Brian as compared with the force Brian used on Gabby, nor did he otherwise conduct any kind of lethality assessment to evaluate whether Brian violently grabbing Gabby's face was an indicator of potential escalating violence in the future. Rather than probing Brian and Gabby's vague story about how their fight led to physical violence, including asking for additional details about the facts Gabby had already explained, Officer Pratt appeared and simply accepted Gabby's claim that she hit Brian first as if the violence reported by witnesses was an isolated incident without any provocation. Instead, Officer Pratt steered the conversation by patronizingly questioning Gabby and whether she was okay, asking if she took medication for anxiety, and asking leading questions about Brian being quote unquote pretty patient with Gabby. Gabby responded by saying that Brian gets really frustrated with her and also has a lot of anxiety. This makes me really mad. Van life was supposed to be fun until your boyfriend's putting hands on you. And how long was that going on for? They were living in this small space. I mean, I can't imagine. It was just a classic case of a piece of shit. I wouldn't say he had mental health issues, but more temperament issues. Okay. Officer Pratt then shared some observations from his personal life. Specifically, he talked about how he and his ex-wife also had anxiety and they would feed off of each other and spiral. In other words, rather than investigating the factors that led to violence between Brian and Gabby to determine whether Gabby was a victim of domestic abuse, including Brian reportedly responding to Gabby's apology by taking her phone, locking her out of the car and away from her laptop, and telling her to take a walk, as well as Brian grabbing Gabby's face with so much force that he sliced her cheek open with his fingernails, Officer Pratt compared the situation to his prior relationship and attributed the confrontation to a bad combination of people with anxiety. Kind of love that. Officer Pratt then left Gabby and went to speak with Brian. Officer Pratt began joking with Brian about how both of them being bald and asking if Brian would like to move in to the shade to talk because Officer Pratt felt bad for him. Officer Pratt told Brian when they arrived on the scene they were worried about what kind of guy Brian was. From what they had heard, but in talking to Gabby, it sounds to me like maybe this was not so clear-cut. In other words, without investigating the underlying conduct that led to Brian and Gabby's fight, Officer Pratt had decided that Brian's violence was excusable because of Gabby's anxiety. He confirmed Gabby's story that the fight escalated once Brian told Gabby to take a breather and he locked the van, but he claimed he only shoved Gabby as a defensive measure. He did not discuss grabbing or scratching Gabby's face, which is an offensive act, and the officers did not ask him about it. Brian claimed that he felt the need to lock her van and keep the keys because his big fear was being left on his own because, quote unquote, I don't really have a phone. So if she goes off without me, I'm on my own. I think that statement says so much, right? Like he didn't want, it was like if he couldn't have Gabby, he was going to end her life. When asked about his demeanor, Brian explained that seeing the police lights turn on make his heart rate go up. He and Officer Robbins then joked about how Officer Robbins also feels the same way when he sees police lights turn on. I'm rolling my eyes. They're gonna like, you know when they say like you roll your eyes so hard they stick to like the back of your head? Melly has no eyes. Yeah, I know. Officer Robbins then asked Brian if Gabby takes any medication, to which Brian said she's crazy, and then laughed and said, no, I don't think so. None that I know of. You know, I hate this part too, where they talk to her about anxiety. I'm like, hello? Are you a psychology professional? Are you a trauma therapist? Are you a social worker? Officer, just because you're a part of the law doesn't mean that you know everything. While Officer Robbins and Ranger Cross spoke with Brian, Officer Pratt began speaking with another ranger who arrived on scene, Melissa. We saw that body cam footage in the last live. Ranger Holes asked Officer Pratt if he's worried about Gabby's story. Tellingly, despite the information he had received about Brian's controlling behavior of locking Gabby out of the van without her phone or laptop and explaining that both she and Brian had serious anxiety, Officer Pratt responded, quote unquote, she has a lot of anxiety, and from what she's claiming, she's a full-on aggressor here. Officer Pratt then went to his car and called the second witness to get their version of events. Ugh, my heart. Right, if he can't have you, no one can. Geez, he was afraid to be alone. That's my point. Yuck. The witness explained that although he had seen Brian push or shove Gabby, he did not observe a full punch to the face or anything. He explained that it appeared as if Brian was trying to close up the van and left a backpack on the back of the van. Brian then climbed into the van, blocking Gabby from getting in. She began hitting Brian with an open hand while telling Brian to let her get back into the van before she eventually was able to climb over Brian and into the van. I don't know. I'm not like, maybe I'm biased, but like, that's her van. So like, if they're already fighting, he's putting hands on her. That's her van. Like I could understand where she's coming in and being upset. Not that that makes it okay that she was like somewhat aggressive towards him, but like, think about what happened prior to that, right? Like we don't know, we only know this much. And there's always three sides to a story. And even though these are legal documents, it's like, we don't know what was happening, you know, like he could have already been throwing her around, threatening to break her laptop, all kinds of stuff, right? And so she's like, wait, now you're doing this, and we're fighting, and now you're locking me out of my own van that you're living in, dude. Like, I'm shook. I'm shook. The witness then prepared a written statement, quote unquote, I observed a man and woman appear to have some sort of dispute. They were talking aggressively at each other and something seemed off. At one point, they were sort of fighting over a phone. I think the male took the female's phone. It appeared that he didn't want her in the white van. He got into the driver's seat and she followed him. At one point, she was punching him in the arm and or face and trying to get into the van. She actually climbed in over him over the passenger seat. I heard her say, quote unquote, why do you have to be so mean? From my point of view, something definitely didn't seem right. It was as if the guy was trying to tell her to leave and maybe take her phone. By the way, that's super, like, it could be, well, it is illegal taking someone's phone when they're trying to get away and call 911. But that's her van. Again, I would be upset too. This isn't fair. This isn't fair. It's not fair to Gabby. It's not fair to her family. None of this is fair. I'm outraged. And he didn't even have a phone, so he's trying to take her phone. But I think the whole texting the ex-boyfriend plays a role, right? She was trying to get out of the relationship. Homie says this is the witness statement. Well, yeah, there was two witnesses, and the police got the first time they got the wrong person. So they didn't even take the correct statement. And yeah, this is what prompted them to respond, but they ignored anything Gabby said. So technically they responded to Brian. Definitely not moving the next one. We don't like Officer Pratt and Officer Robbins. Officer Pratt and Officer Robbins then spoke. Officer Pratt summarized the information he had learned, admitting that he had not really questioned Brian yet, but nonetheless incorrectly concluded that Gabby was a primary aggressor. And yet Officer Pratt has since said that at the time he believed the opposite was true. Quote unquote, I took my 16 years of experience and said I believed Gabby based on the totality of circumstances and based on what she appears physically capable of and based off what I saw him doing and acting the way he was acting. I don't think she assaulted him. Let's dig into that. 16 years, whatever. I believe Gabby based on the totality of circumstances and what she physically appears capable of. What does that mean? Like, you're being sexist. What do you mean? Like, just because she was small, but like vice versa. Brian was small too. She still had a black eye. I don't think that matters. And I don't know why this pissed me off the first time we read it in the actual statement. I don't think she assaulted him. Well, how about you be sure? Right? Utah law requires officers to determine the predominant aggressor. Utah law provides the relevant inquiry focuses on the existence of prior domestic violence complaints and the relativeness, seriousness of injuries, and the likelihood of future injury. Under those factors, Brian was a predominant aggressor. He repeatedly explained that his injuries were baby injuries and not a big deal, the most serious of which were the result of Gabby and Brian struggling over her phone, not the result of intentional harm by Gabby. Gabby's injuries, on the other hand, were the result of Brian grabbing Gabby's face with great force and cutting her cheek. A threat assessment would have revealed that Brian violently grabbing Gabby's face is a well-recognized red flag for potential serious violence. Finally, although Brian claimed to act in self-defense, a proper evaluation of Brian's actions that led to violence would have accounted for Brian's use of non-defensive force when cutting Gabby's face, and it would have led to a determination that Gabby was also acting in self-defense once Brian took the controlling actions of taking Gabby's phone, locking her out of her van and away from her laptop and telling her to walk away. We said that in the previous slide. We were like, that is self-defense. She seems like he was living off of her. He didn't even wear shoes. He was upset because his feet were dirty and she didn't want dirty feet in the van. Do you blame her? Is that a reason to give her a black eye? I really don't think Gabby was all he had and he would not let her go. I really think Gabby was all he had and would not let her go. I agree. Fair? This is right. I know, number 7. This case is, yeah, it is. Which blows my mind that they played buddy-buddy with him. Yeah, why were they buddy-buddy with him? I've never been arrested by a police officer that was like telling me about their relationship with their wife. I'm shook. Officer Dumb and yes, Officer Dumb and Dumber. She had a black eye and he had a scratch. She had a full-on black. Yeah, we saw the pictures in the first live. Yep. She was assaulted and had the marks to prove it. That's where the ball was dropped. Yep, that's right, homie. They didn't believe her because she was being emotional. Like, people with domestic violence history don't show that sign, right? It's usually how you know someone is experiencing domestic violence at times because they are so emotional. And so they walk on eggshells. They fear their surrounding environments because it's always threatened by their abuser, right? Whether it's mentally, sexually, physically, etc., all of the above. And that's, they became, yeah, I agree, Augie. If they can't determine the aggressor, can't they arrest both parties? That's what I said. I was like, arrest them both. Deal with the whole thing of it all later, whether it was wrongful arrest, self-defense, I don't know, pay a good lawyer, get a loan, do something, but they should have both been arrested. A scratch can be a defensive act. The black eye is assault. Thank you, homie hangout. That's right. Officer Pratt explained that what in his view was, quote unquote, the problem with Gabby being the primary aggressor. Quote unquote, in instances of domestic assault, be it male or female, we shall arrest. Now, that doesn't mean they necessarily have to go to jail, but we can do a citation if it meets 1 or 3 of the criteria. One of them, which is we can ensure that they're not going to risk each other's safety, future safety. But the problem with that is that they live in the same vehicle. Officer Pratt reiterated that in his view, Brian was a victim. I have nothing nice to say. But he concluded, fortunately for her, just because he's bigger and stronger, we can't treat this differently than if it was a male on female violence. And we're going to have to charge her. And we could do a citation if there's some arrangement that could be made separate to them. And we have to let them know that there's a no contact order in effect. And we have to let them know that the only way to drop it is to go into the police department during business hours and fill out a waiver. Of course, that did not happen. Officer Pratt informed Brian that the state legislator had taken away the officer's discretion about what to do when confronted with domestic violence. He told Brian that he had determined Gabby was a primary aggressor and Brian was a victim of domestic assault, at which Brian laughed. It's on body cam. We saw it. Officer Pratt clearly understood that the law required the officers to arrest or issue a citation in the situation, and that Utah law imposes an automatic no contact order that places a legal barrier to abusive couples and be in contact with each other. One of the things that the state legislator doesn't give discretion on is charges when it comes to domestic assault. So at this point, you're the victim of a domestic assault, and even if you didn't want to pursue it, we don't have a choice. He also explained, automatically, right now, there's something called a no contact order in place. From this point forward until tomorrow, if you wish to drop it, you have to go into the Moab police station and fill out a waiver that you're requesting a waiving a no contact order. Officer Pratt asked Brian if he had any ideas for how they would avoid having Gabby spend the night in jail, but be separated from Brian so that the officers can simply issue a citation. And since when do cops help you get out of going to jail? Like, who does that? I'm shook. They avoided arresting them and giving Brian a hotel and sending Gabby on her way. Why are they concerned about that? Their officers are not. Why are you concerned about where they're sleeping? You're not their parent. Like, they totally failed. Brian asked the officers if he could spend the night in jail instead. Officer Pratt said he couldn't because Brian wasn't being charged with anything. Officer Robbins told Brian, "You haven't done anything wrong." And Brian responded by joking with Officer Robbins about taking Officer Robbins' radio to jail with him, and both officers laughed. Yikes. That's right, irony. What did I say inside? I missed. You're right. It's her van. If he can't behave and can't keep his hands to himself, leave the damn van. It was easy as that. And cops should assure she's safe. Call her parents. Yeah, I think if her parents would have been called that night and they would have came there, I think she would still be alive. Yeah, it was her van. It was all hers. He used her credit card and stuff after too. All that. We covered that at the beginning. Eventually, the officers arranged through a local domestic violence organization for Brian to have a place to stay the night, allowing Gabby and Brian to be separated for the night. Officer Pratt then spoke to Gabby to explain that she was responsible for what had happened. He said, "You're dealing with some struggles emotionally and mentally at your age, and hopefully it works itself out. But the stuff you did today that contributed to this, because you both contributed to this, is a result of your inability to cope with stress and anxiety you're having. So in any way, you're kind of a victim to this. I think you would have done better if you had the skills to do better, but you don't learn skills until you learn skills." Wait, why is he pretending to be like a total psychologist? Like a mental health professional. He then told Gabby, "Based on what you said and based on what witnesses have said, and even based on what your fiance has mentioned, trying his very hardest not to have you in any trouble, he does have marks on him that witnesses say were caused by you slapping him, and even you say you were slapping him and aggressing him first. And I don't have anyone saying that he punched you aggressively. It sounds like it was shoving in a manner that was more consistent with trying to prevent you from entering the van or to get space from you, not to assail you." Wait, but the caller said they saw him punch Gabby and she like fell upon the van. So what does he mean by, "I don't have anyone saying that he punched you first aggressively"? That's why they got this lawsuit. Officer Pratt's explanation to Gabby did not account for the scratches on Gabby's face or the fact that Brian was acting aggressively towards Gabby simply by locking her out of the van and taking her phone. Officer Pratt continued, quote unquote, if the tables were turned and he was beating on you and you were shoving him, of course, we're going to look at it like, of course she's defending herself to get away from the guy. But we're kind of looking at it the same way with him. And we have to treat both fair. Even if he's a bigger male and you're a smaller female, the law doesn't say, hey, Officer Pratt, hey, Officer Robbins. You can treat people differently based on gender. We can't. Even if it makes no sense, because you probably could not physically destroy the man, that he would if he could and if he would attack you. We can't treat you different. Wait, but you did treat her different. You judged her on her emotions and said that she was too emotional to be a victim. I do. The Petitos watch, her parents watch a lot of the true crime stuff. Yeah, who is this? Officer Pratt? Yeah. Officer Pratt. Oh, Officer Pratt. I'm going to deep dive him too. That would be interesting, huh? I never understand where the pivot to Gabby's the aggressor happened. The rest makes sense for the most part. It's just misdirected. Who trained these cops? I want to see Melly interview Brad. Who's going to bail me out? Just kidding. I do not enforce violence here, but I definitely think that we saw it in the body cam. I think that the family should have got a lot more than the money they got. Yeah, it was in Utah. Despite acknowledging the situation makes no sense, given the physical mismatch between Brian and Gabby, the officers disregarded and failed to investigate Brian's controlling and abusive actions that led to the confrontation, instead focusing solely on Gabby's admission that she hit Brian before he hit her. But according to both Brian and Gabby's account, that was not the beginning of the aggression that led to the physical fight. No, it was when he punched her at the co-op and two people called it in. So now you're calling the witnesses liars. I would be PO'd about that. Officer Pratt then repeated the speech he'd given to Brian about how the officers had no discretion when addressing domestic violence situation, explaining, quote unquote, in the legislature in Utah, they've made a law that when we have a domestic assault, they don't trust police to make good decisions because too many cops have made bad decisions. First of all, officer, the way you're talking is so not professional. Second of all, you're exactly right. You made a bad decision. So they say we're not going to give you the discretion. We're going to give you a law that says if you have domestic assault, whether it's male or female on male, whoever the primary aggressor is has to be charged. No choice. You don't get to give them a warning. It doesn't matter if they're barely hurt and at all, and the guy doesn't want to press charges or the girl doesn't want to press charges. We don't have a choice. We literally have no choice. So it looks like you made a choice though, right? Like they sent him off to the hotel. They were even giving them advice on how to clear the no contact order the next day. So he's basically telling them, the cop, we're going to separate you, but this is what you have to do tomorrow to go and get, so you guys can be back together and have that drop. If that's not putting him in a situation of future domestic violence incidents, I don't know what is. Even if they arrested her, she'd be alive. Yeah, I think she would. Gabby began to sob, begging for the officers to issue a citation for hitting the curb, instead saying, I don't want to be separated, and explained that being separated from Brian would cause serious anxiety because she and Brian were, quote unquote, a team. Officer Pratt told Gabby he would call his supervisor to see if there was a way around the Utah legislature mandate regarding domestic violence. Wait, what do you mean a way around? Like, drop a document that lists all the ways around a law. I mean, what do you mean? What do you mean, like, around the law? Gabby then called her parents. On that call, Gabby's parents demanded that Gabby fly home to get away from Brian, offering her to pay for a ride to Salt Lake City and her flight home. But upon learning that the police were involved, Gabby's parents accepted Gabby's assurances and she would continue her trip. Gabby's parents relied to their detriment on police officers involved to evaluate the situation and intervene as necessary to protect Gabby. But for the officers' failure to investigate and follow Utah law, Gabby's parents would have had to intervene to end the trip and bring Gabby home. Officer Pratt called the assistant chief, Braden Palmer, and explained the incident. His description minimized Brian's controlling behavior of locking Gabby out of her van and away from the laptop, and entirely omits crucial details about Brian's confiscating Gabby's cell phone and grabbing her face so forcefully that he cut her cheek. He also emphasized Gabby's anxiety without acknowledging Brian's reported anxiety, thereby presenting the situation as a one-sided assault instigated by Gabby as a result of her emotional or mental health breakdown. Officer Pratt then asked Assistant Chief Palmer if there was any way around the domestic assault statute. Assistant Palmer said the only way not to comply with the statute is if the statute did not apply. Officer Pratt reread the statute, searching for a loophole that would allow him to ignore his non-discretionary responsibilities under Utah law. After briefly reading the statute, Officer Pratt spoke to Officer Robbins, providing a chilling description of the exact situation Gabby was experiencing, but that the officer's sloppy investigation had failed to identify. You know why the domestic assault code is there. It's there to protect people. The reason they don't give us discretion on these things is because too many times women who are at risk want to go back to their abuser. They just wanted him to stop, and they don't want to be separated. They don't want him to be charged. They don't want him to go to jail. And then they end up getting worse and worse treatment, and then they end up getting killed. He literally said those words. Again, why is he trying to act like he's a mental health professional, knows everything about abusers and the relationships, and then he talks about how people end up being unalived in domestic violence cases. But you're here asking about how you can cut corners on this and hey, CW, good to see you. Night, Mary. If she did get arrested, he probably would have been the one who picked her up. Damn, Brian, he had anxiety. Dang, Brian. You're right, Lily. Anyways, let's move on. Officer Pratt articulated his clear understanding of the foreseeability of a victim being killed if police did not follow the statute. He then proceeded to intentionally manipulate the investigation to find a loophole to avoid the law, and as a result, Gabby was killed. Officer Pratt, under Utah code, describing assault under Utah law, in his words, the statute provides, quote unquote, an assault is an attempt with unlawful force or violence to do bodily injury to another. That incomplete regarding of the statute led Officer Pratt to conclude incorrectly that the question was whether Gabby had the necessary intent to cause Brian bodily injury. But the statute goes on to define assault alternatively to include circumstances where an individual, quote unquote, commits an act with unlawful force or violence that causes bodily injury. In other words, under Utah law, intent to cause bodily harm is not required to satisfy the definition of assault. Officer Pratt explained to Officer Robbins that the question was whether it was her intention to do him bodily harm. We don't care what the result was. We care about the intent. He then instructed Officer Robbins that, quote unquote, if you go ask her, what was your intention when you were slapping him? Gabby says, I wanted him to hurt or be ill or impair his physical condition, then there's nothing we can do. One way to word it might be, hey, when you slapped him, were you intending to cause him physical pain or impairment of his physical condition? What was your intention? Is that what you're attempting to do? Whatever she returns to that question will seal her fate. Yeah, I never was in trouble by a police officer and was asked, like, what was my intention? But that's a threat. Whatever she answers, that will seal her fate. That's coaching. We heard at the beginning, right? Officer Pratt and Robbins then spoke with Gabby. Officer Pratt coached her to give the answer he believed he needed to exercise discretion and declined to enforce Utah law relating to domestic violence. Officer Pratt said, Gabby, this is a very, very important question. How you answer this question is going to determine what happens next. But the only person who can answer this question is you. Think very hard before you answer the question. Do not quickly answer it. Think very hard. When you slapped him those times, were you attempting to cause him physical pain or physical impairment? What was that you were attempting to do to him? Gabby responded, no. Exactly as Officer Pratt hoped she would. She explained that she was trying to get Brian to stop telling her to calm down. Officer Pratt turned to Officer Robbins while still in front of Gabby and said, it doesn't sound to me like she attempted to injure him. It's your call. This is 100% your call. I support you either way. The officers then moved away from Gabby, where Officer Robbins explained his concerns to Officer Pratt. Officer Robbins says, I can't say I entirely believe her. So if he didn't believe her, why didn't you arrest them? Why did you say she was a predominant aggressor? Officer Pratt responded, quote unquote, I'm recording and society, the judges, and everyone can judge me for this. I'm looking for a 110-pound female and her fiance who have no means to be separated. He doesn't want to pursue it. She's not a threat to him, more than slight abrasions from her fingernails. I don't care if we use the actual letter of the law to not charge, but I also don't care because it literally does possibly make sense to go full on domestic assault and do the whole thing. This is your opportunity to make the decision. Despite Officer Pratt's prior articulation of the law and the foreseeability of a victim being unalived as a result of an officer's failure to follow the law, he continued to push to find a loophole, stating that he didn't care if they followed the law. Instead, Officer Pratt acted willfully to disregard and act directly contrary to critical information that he learned during his encounter with Brian and Gabby, including Brian's abuse of Gabby, in order to circumvent non-discretionary Utah law that required him to issue a citation or make an arrest and impose an automatic no-contact order. Specifically, he has admitted that he saw through Brian's facade at the time of the encounter. He explained that during the traffic stop, he had determined that Brian clearly has influence over her mentality that looked unsavory to me. He's mentally messing with her, hanging her backpack outside, saying you need to go take a walk, and saying weird things to us, like, what if I touch your radio? He's just weird, not a healthy dude, and that was clear. Simply, he claimed that the officers saw his stupid bullshit. So if he saw all of that, it's so frustrating. Officer Pratt has also admitted, I thought he was an emotional threat to her. I thought he was a mental threat to her. Similarly, he says he concluded during the traffic stop that Brian seemed like a mental and emotional bully. Officer Pratt also observed that the statements by Brian, Gabby, and eyewitnesses were strangely consistent in their description of Brian using physical force to grab Gabby by the face. Officer Pratt has also colorfully admitted, I know these kinds of guys. Brian didn't get away with anything for being cute. Brian showed more red flags than a Chinese communist rally. That's what the cop said. That's his statement. But in Officer Pratt's word, he couldn't do anything because there's no law against being a shitty boyfriend and gaslighting and taking advantage of people mentally and emotionally for your own reasons. Of course, there are laws against the type of behavior when coupled with using physical force and causing harm, such as the force Brian admitted to using against Gabby. Indeed, the Utah legislature has removed police officers' discretion when confronted with those facts, requiring them to issue a citation or make an arrest and issue a no-contact order. Despite all of the information available to Officer Pratt and Brian's use of physical force against Gabby, Officer Pratt's assessment that Gabby posed no physical threat to Brian, and Officer Pratt's assessment that Brian was emotionally and mentally abusing Gabby, Officer Pratt continued to act as though Gabby were properly understood to be the predominant aggressor. Based on his willful disregard of the facts he admits to knowing at the time, Officer Pratt chose not to investigate further or cite or charge Brian for using physical force against Gabby while emotionally and mentally abusing her. Again, despite knowing that Brian had used physical violence against Gabby in a way that was not defensive when he grabbed her face so forcefully that he cut her cheek, and then he escalated tensions that led 911 call by taking Gabby's phone and locking her out of the van and away from her laptop. Officer Pratt's observation that Gabby posed no physical threat to Brian and that Brian was emotionally and mentally abusing Gabby and that Brian had used physical force against Gabby should have, at the very least, caused him and Officer Robbins to reconsider their simplistic determination that Gabby was a primary aggressor. Instead, Officer Robbins responded to Officer Pratt by saying, "Let's do this. Taking your advice, let me do a crime report on this. Won't charge her now, won't cite her for now. I'll send it off to the city attorney. Let them screen it and make a decision." Despite Officer Pratt's prior reassurance that he would support Officer Robbins' decision, Officer Pratt pressured Officer Robbins to reconsider, saying, quote unquote, "If you send it to the city attorney and they strongly disagree with your decision and they throw a complete fit, you might hear about it in a very negative way. So I would make the decision yourself." Officer Pratt continued to manipulate the investigation and Officer Robbins towards a particular outcome, while attempting to avoid responsibility for actually making the decision. Ranger Holes observed, "I'd rather be dinged for a decision I made than a decision I didn't." Officer Pratt added, "Especially if they think you were completely negligent in your decision. Why give it to them?" But Officer Pratt reiterated that he supported Officer Robbins in whatever decision he would make, including if he would send Gabby to jail. Despite telling Officer Robbins that he would support Officer Robbins' decision, even if Officer Robbins decided to send Gabby to jail, Officer Pratt has said, if she should have gone to jail, if that's what should have happened, then kick me out of the police department. Cool, I'll go back to being a drywaller where the first thing I can do is mess up a joint or something on a wall. At that same time, Officer Pratt has also said the only person that could have gone to jail was Gabby. I don't think it was right. I will die on this hill. If it was wrong for me not to arrest her, I still wouldn't have arrested her. In other words, despite his assurances to get Officer Robbins and to Officer Pratt, would not have supported a decision by Officer Robbins to arrest Gabby. Shockingly, he said that he would still not have supported this decision, even if he knew it was the right one. At that point, Officer Pratt received a call about another incident requiring police attention. Officer Pratt asked Officer Robbins, "You got this?" Officer Robbins responded, "I'm making the decision. I'm going to cite them. I'm going to follow through the procedure." Officer Pratt interrupted, "Okay, would you feel more comfortable handling the other call?" Officer Robbins grimaced and said yes, because it seemed like a headache, no matter what he decided about how to address Brian and Gabby's circumstances. So that was a headache, but Gabby lost her life. Officer Pratt continued to manipulate the situation, pushing for a different outcome, searching for a loophole, allowing the officers to abdicate the role that Utah legislator assigned them when they encounter domestic violence. He said, "Look, another option is not to charge them, but separate them for the night. If they find themselves together again, what is it to you? You separated them, you provided their safety. If he doesn't have enough sense to stay away and you got them separated, it's on him." Officer Robbins acquiesced, nodding along with Officer Pratt, as Officer Pratt explained his intentional plan to avoid the statute's requirement and their duty to protect Gabby. After manipulating the investigation and pushing Officer Robbins towards his desired outcome, Officer Pratt then left to handle some other call, attempting to avoid responsibility for the ultimate decision. Officer Robbins spoke to Brian to gather that information, including his driver's license and phone number. When Officer Robbins asked Brian for his phone number, Brian reached out the pocket and pulled out a phone, despite previously telling Officer Robbins that he didn't have a phone. Even though Brian pulled his phone out of his pocket in front of Officer Robbins did not follow up on Brian's claim that he did not have a phone. Nor did Officer Robbins probe Brian's claim that he had taken Gabby's phones, which had contributed to tensions escalating into physical violence based on the self-evidently false reason that Brian feared being left without a phone. Officer Robbins told Gabby, "This is what I'm going to do. I've decided I'm not going to cite you for domestic violence battery, okay? It was only going to be a Class B misdemeanor. However, the domestic violence portion of it enhances it and makes life a major pain in the butt. So I'm choosing not to cite you today. So you're not going to be charged with anything, all right? But this is what I have to do. I'm separating the two of you tonight, okay? I want you guys both to be tonight away from each other, relax and breathe." When Officer Robbins asked Gabby if there was anything she'd like him to tell Brian, she asked Officer Robbins to remind him to get a phone charger. Once again, even when directly confronted with information about Brian having a phone, Officer Robbins failed to follow up on why Brian claimed he didn't have a phone, which Brian claimed was a reason why he felt necessary to confiscate Gabby's phone. He lied about the phone. He straight up lied. Why didn't Brian have his own freaking phone? Right. After instructing Brian and Gabby not to contact each other for the night, Officer Robbins drove Brian to a motel and let Gabby leave in her van. Officer Robbins has since acknowledged, "I know I made a mistake that day." Roughly 2 weeks after Gabby's encounter with the Moab Police Department, Brian brutally murdered her by strangulation, hiding her body at a campsite in Wyoming. Gabby's death was predicted by Officer Pratt when he stated at the scene, "You know why the domestic assault code is there. It's there to protect people. The reason they don't give us discretion on these things is because too many times women who are at risk want to go back to the abuser. They just wanted him to stop and they don't want to be separated. They don't want him charged. They don't want him to go to jail. And they end up getting worse. And the worst treatment is that they end up getting killed." But he nevertheless intentionally chose not to follow the statute, stating, "I don't care if we use the actual letter of the law." In a subsequent review of the officers' handling of their encounter with Brian and Gabby, Captain Ratcliffe of the 𝐵rice City Police Department concluded that the officers made several mistakes, including misinterpreting and misapplying Utah law and failing to properly investigate. He conducted that he could not rule out that Gabby's murder might have been prevented if the officers had acted properly. We like Captain Brandon. He's the one who did the investigation on the Moab City, the huge document we read. And he states that he cannot conclude to not rule out that Gabby's murder might have been prevented if the officers acted properly. On information and belief, prior to his being hired by Moab City Police Department, Officer Pratt had been incredibly accused of engaging in serious misconduct, including abuse of police power and domestic violence. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Complete bum had to live off of her. Yeah, Brian. Mm-hmm. And now we're finding out about this officer, right? He had a history. On information and belief, prior to his being hired by Moab City Police Department, Officer Pratt had been credibly accused. I just repeated that. Between 2008 and 2017, Officer Pratt served as an officer and then as police chief in Salina, Utah. During his time as police chief in Salina, Pratt carried on several extramarital affairs in the small town. I'm shook. So the officer who was trying to be a therapist and be like a mental health professional and telling him like, "Oh, it's just a fight. It's just nothing. Want, want, want." He's sitting there having affairs. And Officer Pratt. Come on now. One of the women, witness one, Pratt was involved with between approximately March 2017 and June 2017, has provided credible testimony that Pratt improperly used his position to use government buildings for sex. I'm shook. I didn't even know about this. Did you guys know about this? Hey, 𝐁𝐮𝐲. I hope he got fired. Let me repeat that again. Pratt was involved between approximately March 2017 and June 2017 that he had improperly used his positions to use government buildings for sex. Witness 1 states that it was Pratt's regular practice not to follow through on investigations or to sweep cases under the rug to avoid work, stating, quote unquote, it's too much paperwork, or there's no way I'm doing all the paperwork. Ugh. I'm not only a cheater, but he's lazy. No. He just got exposed, Officer Pratt. Hi, Britt. Good to see you, my love. I'm glad you made it. Witness 1 states that Pratt improperly used his position as police chief to improperly manipulate her and 𝐕𝐶𝐻 harass her. Witness 1 states that when she intended to disclose Pratt's pervasive misconduct, Pratt threatened to unalive her. Wait, what? No way. There's no way. This cop threatened to unalive someone, allegedly. This is a lawsuit against the Petito family in Moab Police Department. I'm shook. Pratt pulled witness 1 over in her car with a 5-year-old daughter in the back seat. Pratt credibly and clearly threatened her by stating, quote unquote, if any of this gets out, I will kill you with a crowbar. On another occasion, Pratt told her that he had been so angry with her that, quote unquote, if this had been a week ago, I would have been digging a grave and you would have been in it. Augie, you got it right. That's why he was so nice and friendly, right? Befriending him. Hey, she hit you. Oh, we really had beef with Officer Pratt from the last lives. Now we really got beef with Officer Pratt. Officer Pratt, where art thou? Where are you, Officer Pratt? We have questions. Who are you threatening to kill with a crowbar? A woman that you're pulling over with a 5-year-old daughter in the back seat, and you're threatening her in a government building, and you're harassing her, and you are sitting there telling Gabby that she is not a victim, that she's the aggressor. I'm disgusted. I'm outraged. I'm horrified. I'm petrified. These guys should be prosecuted far more than just leave with pay, right? This is disgusting. I had no idea, by the way. I had not read this lawsuit before. We're deep diving the Gabby Petito case. If you just got here, we're going through like 2,000 pages of documents. Not tonight. We would be here until like Christmas time. But we're splitting it into different parts. So this is crazy. This is crazy. The cop who ignored her is a predator, is an abuser, commits domestic violence, sexually harasses people he's pulling over, uses his place of power as law enforcement to do these things. I'm shook. As a domestic abuser himself, who has had authority and threats of physical violence to control and intimidate sexual partners, it becomes clear why Officer Pratt was fundamentally biased in his approach to the investigation, identifying with Gabby's abuser, ignoring the victim, and intentionally looking for loopholes to get around the requirements of Utah law and his duty to protect Gabby. Hey, little Smokey, good to see you. Witness 1 subsequently reported some of Pratt's misconduct and harassment to her city officials. At a short time later, in July of 2017, Pratt abruptly announced his resignation, claiming that he was, quote unquote, leaving full-time law enforcement to pursue other interests and experience life from new vantage points. After resigning as police chief in Salina, Pratt explained in a publicly published statement online and in a podcast that he had become disillusioned with police work and that it was his practice to find loopholes to avoid applying the law, stating, I'd find my own loopholes, perfectly legal, and I think very ... just loopholes. As an officer described him as being disillusioned with police work and admitting finding loopholes to avoid applying the law, Officer Pratt should have never been rehired as an officer for the Moab City Police Department. Pratt's dangerous approach is evident throughout his interaction with Gabby and Brian as he manipulated the investigation by intentionally looking for loopholes to get around the requirements of Utah law and his duty to protect Gabby. Upon information and belief, Officer Pratt has continued his pervasive pattern of sexual and professional misconduct in Moab, having sex with witnesses in cases he is involved in and using police vehicles for sex. I'm done. I'm done. I can't. This is crazy. This is insane. Upon information and belief, Officer Pratt is currently the subject of an internal affairs investigation for professional and sexual misconduct involving sex with another Moab Police Department officer. Oh, you know I'm going to try to get those documents tonight. We need to know what you were sleeping with your coworker and having sex in a cop car on the clock and then threatening people you were pulling over. Of course. Oh yeah. Moab City Police Department, including Chief Edge, knew or should have known about Officer Pratt's prior misconduct when hiring him to join the police department. Moab City Police Department, including Chief Edge, knew or should have known that Officer Pratt had a history of pervasive professional and sexual misconduct, including sexual harassment and intimate partner violence, is manifestly unfit and unsafe to be a police officer. Rather than terminating Officer Pratt as unfit and unsafe for police duty, Moab City Police Department has promoted him to detective and been assigned as a school resource officer at all 3 schools in the Grand County School District. Wait, hold on. Rather than terminating Officer Pratt as unfit and unsafe, he is now promoted to a detective at a school. We don't live there, but we're definitely going to try to reach out to the governor and see if that's actually still true. Or at least the district attorney. We need to get info on that. He shouldn't be around kids. I'm horrified. This was back then, though, so he might not be there anymore. In 2018, Moab City Police Department entered into a written agreement with Utah Domestic Violence Coalition and 𝗟𝗵𝗃 in a local domestic violence resource center and shelter wherein Moab committed to faithfully following all essential elements of the lethality assessment of protocol, including training, reporting, and faithful implementation of lethality assessment screens when responding to cases of reported domestic violence. In 2019, Moab City Police Department renewed its commitment to full and faithful implementation of the LAP for a period of 3 years. Upon information and belief, Moab failed to faithfully implement the LAP and was not actively training its officers or requiring the use of LAP by its officers at the time of the incident in August of 2021. An officer who was employed at the Moab City Police Department has reported that Moab was not using LAP at the time and that LAP was Moab's policy on paper but not in practice. As a result of Moab City Police Department failure to show its own policies and obligations to actively employ the LAP when responding to and or investigating the reported cases of domestic violence. Defendants failed to use the LAP when responding the incident involving Gabby and Brian. Underscoring the inadequacy of Moab City Police Department resources, procedures, and training relating to domestic violence, and demonstrating that it could have been feasible for the department to have sufficient resources, procedures, and training, department has advertised a job opening for domestic violence specialist almost a year after Gabby's day. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Like training, putting them in a classroom. I don't want to hear it. Right. First cause of action, negligence. Defendants had a special relationship with Gabby, and Gabby reasonably relied on them to properly investigate and enforce the law after receiving reports of domestic violence between Brian and Gabby. Defendants detaining Brian and Gabby had a duty to exercise reasonable care to, among other things, properly investigate and enforce Utah law governing reports of domestic abuse between Brian and Gabby. Defendants also had a duty to follow policies and legislative mandates regarding domestic violence incidents. Also had a duty to exercise reasonable care and provide appropriate training, supervision, instruction, discipline, and control over subordinates. Defendant also had a duty to exercise reasonable care and promulgate, create, implement, and enforce appropriate policies regarding response to reports of domestic violence. Officer Pratt also intentionally acted or failed to act without cause or excuse and was aware that his conduct would probably result in injury. Defendants breached their duty by failing to exercise reasonable care and were negligent when, among other things, they failed to enforce Utah law, investigate inconsistency in Brian's version of events, properly evaluate whether Brian was the predominant aggressor, and properly assess Brian and Gabby's confrontation to determine whether, as in many domestic abuse situations, the victim was protecting her abuser. Arrange, facilitate, or provide immediate and adequate notice of the rights of the victims, of the remedies and services available to victims, provide appropriate training, create and implement and enforce policies. Believing that law enforcement authorities were properly handling the domestic violence incident, Gabby's parents discontinued their efforts to intervene, to fly Gabby home and have her van shipped home. Defendants' failure to exercise reasonable care in investigating and evaluating the facts surrounding Brian and Gabby's confrontation and intentionally subverting Utah law relating to domestic violence exposed Gabby to further and escalating domestic violence, leading her to eventually get strangled to death by Brian. Defendant's negligence was a proximate cause of Gabby's injuries and damages, including but not limited to further domestic violence, culminating in a savage attack resulting in Gabby's death. Gabby otherwise suffered additional harm and incurred damages to the defendants due to the defendant's negligence. Plaintiffs have a good faith argument that their negligence claim is warranted by existing law or by non-frivolous argument for the modification or reversal of existing law. Second cause of action, failure to train, supervise, control, discipline, and negligent hiring. At relevant times, Moab City Police Department chief were engaged in policymaking to supervise and control all policies, rules, guidelines, customs, as well as hiring decisions. Assistant Chief Braden and John Jane Doe had duties to train, supervise, control, instruct, and discipline subordinates. More specifically, the Moab Police Department chief had duty to provide the training necessary to ensure the subordinates would adequately investigate self-evident falsities in Brian's account of circumstances that triggered his confrontation with Gabby, evaluate the factors or determining the predominant aggressor, properly assess domestic violence, and enforce rather than subvert non-discretionary Utah laws. The Moab Police Department Chief Edge, Assistant Chief Braden, and John Jane Doe subjected Gabby to further domestic violence, culminating in her brutal murder when they hired and retained Officer Pratt, who had a history of pervasive professional and sexual misconduct, including sexual harassment and intimate partner violence, and manifestly unfit and unsafe to be a police officer, and also when they failed to train and supervise, control, instruct, or discipline. In fact, Assistant Chief instructed subordinates to search the domestic assault statute and attempt to subvert the officer's obligations to enforce non-discretionary law. Based on the Assistant Chief Braden's instructions, the officers coached Gabby to provide answers that they incorrectly claimed allowed them to subvert non-discretionary laws regarding domestic violence. The failure to train and supervise, the failure to follow the Moab City's Police Department and obligations to employ LAP caused subordinates to breach their duty to Gabby, resulting in harm and relating damages. Third cause of action, survival. Plaintiffs have a good faith argument that the claim is warranted by existing law or by a non-frivolous argument for the modification or reversal of existing law. Fourth cause of action, wrongful death. Gabby's costs associated death, the value of Gabby's services would have provided loss of Gabby's society, comfort, association, love, counsel, care, loss of reasonable expectation to associate Gabby with the rest of her natural life, and for any and all the other damages may be just under the circumstance. They asked for $50 million in excess of the minimum jurisdictional amount. Fourth cause of actions, $50 million. All right, we're done. We've got through it. Hey, Antonio. Good to see you. Good night, BC girl. Thank you. We'll be back tomorrow. It's hard to pay attention. Wait, why are my glasses driving you nuts? Oh, the reflection, or what do you mean? Yay, we got through it. And I did not know that this officer was a predator. I did not know. And I'm happy we got through that. I have so much to say. All right. Well, we'll be back tomorrow with more. There's so much more on this case too. Learn something new about the cop makes sense now. I know we were doing these deep dives and we're like, what is wrong with this guy? We did. Yeah, I said a lot of stuff. I was like, what the heck? Anyways, my heart goes out to the Petito family. Yes, please watch from the beginning. This is part 3. There's a whole playlist of Gabby, and it's only going to get bigger because we have a lot to go through. Yeah, I'm determined to do it too. I want to get through all of it. So anyways, I appreciate you guys for being here. Thank you for being here. Make sure you hit the like button. Yes, RIP Gabby. RIP to Gabby. That's right, Austin. And again, my heart goes out to the Petito family. Thank you, homie. Thank you, Augie. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I appreciate you guys for being here. Make sure you hit the like button. I will see you in a little bit. Melly After Dark. We'll be back the rest of the week with more true crime. I have a couple new cases we're going to talk about. Maybe a collab, I'm thinking, should happen this week. And we're going to continue to deep dive Gabby. And, ooh, that's right. Live and breathe true crime here. Anyways, I appreciate you guys for being here. I will see you on the next one. I hope you guys stay blessed and stay safe. Yes, please hit that like button. I appreciate you guys for being here. Have a good night.
So all they do is work, but nobody can hide once she gets a hold of that paperwork. So don't you dare come in here acting like a jerk. Bands might make her dance, but new court docs will make her wanna twerk. Dark hair shining in the Cali sun, Melly on the case, so no one and trying to run. These Sims can ask for feet pics, but you getting none. It's 𝗏 with Melly, let's have some fucking fun. So if you're feeling for true crime, like it's a drug, 𝗏 with Melly is your motherfucking plug. Going so hard on criminals, they'll call their mama for a hug. She's finding out all the stuff they try to sweep under the rug. Dark hair shining in the Cali sun,